I'd like to start by looking at what we have now and what we've had in the past. America has had a patriarchal society. It's easily seen by the fact that most of us get our last names from our fathers. We have this expectation of men to be the breadwinners, to bring home the money, and to sort of support the family. And when you have more women going into these roles with more education and perhaps getting larger salaries as a result, there's definitely going to be some sort of feeling in the male community. Are we not good enough? How have we failed? And I don't think people have thought about that enough as that big of a change, but it is definitely important to look at. And it's interesting now with the job force or the workforce, because women, even though it seems like the same amount of money, women in the same position as men in a job tend to make less money. I don't know the exact numbers, but it is definitely a lower amount. So it's interesting to consider if the salaries will become more equal or if women will surpass men. And another thing to look at is how are women treated in the workforce? Is there respect? These are all things that we have to really look at if this is going to be a big change in our future.
I agree. I think that gender equality is something that we've had pride in over the last few years especially, and we try to assert that women and men are equal in every respect, but it's still a very traditional concept that it is a patriarchal society. So the fact that we're even talking about women kind of stepping up and taking the role of men in society is proof that it is something exceptional, and we're hoping that it'll expand in the future.
And I think what she was talking about with the wage gaps and like the idea of the glass ceiling that exists in the workforce, which is like women can rise through the ranks, but eventually there's a point where they're not they don't really get to the highest positions because of how they're viewed. But I think the idea of the growing equality with women, which is present today, is also like growing in correlation with the growing equality with the immigrant workforce too. You're seeing a lot more of ethnic diversity in higher ranks in the workforce now.
Yes.
And I think that's all positive as our country begins to equalize, because we're a world power now. So we can't just look at like one specific type of people. Our actions here affect like the entire world.
Definitely. And as you guys were talking about this, it brought up a question in my mind. Why do you feel, or do you feel, that there's so much, I guess, difficulty with accepting others, let's say, saying, well, the idea of women moving up the ladder and now men moving down. Do you feel that that's something positive, that's going to create some sort of competition, and then the competition is good for the cause? That, even with race, the increase in race, within any area, that the competition of, okay, we want equality, we want to be equal. However, when we see that something's not equal, we push for a change, and we keep pushing, and the idea of pushing could be something positive? How do you feel that this is something that could happen, or is it this change could be something that we can embrace also, or do you feel like it's something negative?
Well, I see what you're saying. I know balance is very ideal, and with men and women, first it was the men on top, and now it seems like women are kind of pushing on top of the men, so you don't really know, you can't have that perfect balance all the time. We're just kind of always working towards it, going back and forth, and I think that competition definitely does help motivate people, because it's not only yourself that you're working for, but you're just kind of, if you're a woman in the workforce and you succeed at something really big, it's a step forward for all women. It's not just you.
I was just thinking about it. It was very interesting. Well, thank you for sharing your insights to these matters. Now we will move to our last question. There is no doubt that these projected changes in age groups, ethnicity, language, and race will have inevitable effects on what has been historically described as the American dream. Will the nature of the dream require change itself? For example, it is easy to argue and support the fact that environmentally, suburbia produces an inefficient lifestyle. We continue to measure success and middle-class status by means of affording a home in a suburban environment. Nick, share your reflections about the future makeup of the American dream for our changing population.
First, I'd like to bring up like the idea of the American dream, and it's kind of like that anyone can, regardless of racial, ethnic, or economic background, like with the desire to succeed, can. And I don't think that this idea will necessarily change because living in suburbia is inefficient, because people want to live in suburbia because it's proved that they are successful. And so I don't think the actual American dream will change, but aspects of suburbia will have to change in order to accommodate for the lifestyle. With like the advancement in technology today, we have video conferencing and video chatting, and I think these will like limit the amount that people will actually have to commute to the cities from the suburbs. So they'll still be able to have their home in the suburbs, but they won't have to commute as much, which will like then positively affect the environment with like less commuting and less waste.
I remember as a child, to piggyback what you were saying, as a child growing up in the city, I remember taking rides on Sunday afternoons, throughout the suburbs, the outskirts of the city, and being told by my dad that one day you can make it here. You can buy a house here and live here and raise your children here, but you have to go to school and you do this. And there were steps that I needed to do to achieve that goal. And it's just ironic that we're talking about this. And as a child growing up, I know that I knew I made it in life or achieved that American dream if I had moved to the suburbs and purchased a house there. And what's the next step now? For those who grow up in the suburbs, what are their goals? How do they measure their achievement? What is their American dream? What do you guys think?
It's interesting how the American dream is associated, or how your example is sort of associated with living in the suburban lifestyle. But ultimately, I think that the American dream is sort of based on the individual, and that you have control over what your American dream is, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be associated with any sort of area where you want to live, or any sort of common social construct. But I think whatever anyone wants to do, they can create their own American dream.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially because now we have so many educational options. It's a lot more than people from the previous generation had. So you can really just form your own path, and there's like a lot of different people to talk to and different ways to go where you want to go. You can go out of the country, you can stay here and live in any kind of environment you want. So I'm not sure if we'll see a trend towards anything, but it definitely depends on like your personal interests.
I certainly agree with Adam saying that the American dream is what is made by the people who live here, and it's not, I don't think it's a general concept, because as we're just saying, the demographics of America are changing, and so we have so many different people, and you cannot in any way, shape, or form put the same umbrella over this large group of people. Not everyone in that diverse group will be satisfied by a house in the suburbs.
Definitely. I feel that with the increase in immigration and what their idea of making it is under the American dream, I believe that it's important that whatever your dream is that you just don't feel comfortable and become stagnant. Mm-hmm. Because we know and we understand that these issues are out there, that we are a changing society and we're pushing forward. And if you're comfortable with just quote unquote making it and being comfortable and not understanding it, you won't be part of that change. And I think overall that's the worry. That could be the fear. Yeah. Is that we need everybody, well, not the majority of the people, to be aware as to what the issues are, mm-hmm. and that we want you to be part of that change and understand that making it will be pushing forward, whatever your dream is. Well, with those final comments, we will have to close our discussion. On behalf of the Masuk Report, I want to thank our panelists, Molly, Siobhan, Adam, and Nick for sharing their thoughts and opinions. We hope you have found our discussion to be of interest and value. We look forward to to you joining us for the next edition of the Masuk Report. I am Joel Castillo, and I wish you well. Thank you, and have a good day.